Either we are there or not, ITSPmagazine still gets the best stories. There are plenty of conferences and all sorts of events that spark our curiosity and allow us to start conversations with some of the world's brightest minds. In person or virtually, we sit down with them at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Together, we discover what the synergy of these three elements means for the future of humanity. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
And here we go live.
Yes, it's
from somewhere
in Vegas, but not in Vegas, in spirit in Vegas. And I think the theme, though they don't really set a theme, but I think it's the homecoming this year is kind of the theme. And the only thing I can think of when I think of homecoming is high school and the yearbook, right? And I'm thrilled to have the author of the security yearbook on with us, Richard Stiennon. Thanks.
Hey, Sean, thank you so much.
Stiennon, I think I always mispronounce your name, and
everybody does. So I respond to either one. That's fine.
Stiennon, there we go. But I mean, the work you do, I'm always amazed by the amount of information that's there, and not just data, just the anecdotal and the thought that goes on top of all the stuff that you pull together. It's simply amazing, Richard. So hats off to you for continued success with that. And
thank you so much.
Yeah.
A lot of,
I guess it gets easier, right? Does it get easier every year? Exactly.
Yeah. Well, yes. Putting the book together gets easier because I'm building processes, but a lot of it, as I add stories and anecdotes and interviews with pioneers, a lot of it's motivated by, I'm getting older. I'm going to start forgetting this stuff. And I still go, who is that company that randomized the memory addresses in a server, and you forget about Stiennon Security because they were cool when they launched, but then they kind of got acquired in a fire sale. And that translates to the entire industry. There's probably, the industry is growing in people 20% a year. So that means there are 20% of the people who are starting thinking that cloud security has been here forever, that Palo Alto is the solution for firewalls, and not understanding what went before and how we got to where we are today. So I wanted to have it all in one place and kind of make the history of the cybersecurity industry. Every year, of course, I have to update who the players are because they change a lot. There are about 400 acquisitions every year. Not all of them disappear. Sometimes the acquirer keeps the brand, so it sticks around. So I have to keep tracking the organization. There are about 200 companies that just dissolve and go away because I track every company. If you've got a website and a LinkedIn page and one employee, usually the founder, you're in the book and you're in the database that I've created. But I have to check that every month to see if headcount goes to 0, I have to go check to see what's going on there. And if, there's some companies in Russia where every Russian citizen seemed to take their LinkedIn profile down in May of 2020. Not sure why they did that, but they did. They also took down their LinkedIn pages, but Kaspersky's still there, and all the other spin-offs from Kaspersky are still there, and it's good to track them and know what they're up to because they've got interesting technology. Sometimes their research is the only place you can get their research, right? Because all the other research organizations love researching Russian APTs and Chinese APTs, but here in the US, probably in Israel and the rest of the friendly countries, they're not going to publish research on the Equation group. But Kaspersky has no qualms at all about doing that. And that's important to track.
Certainly is. And I wanted to we were on earlier with some folks and Miko hyping in earlier in the week. And we've heard that there's been a lot of rebranding as well and renaming. And even Miko's company went from F-Secure through I think a few names to with secure.
Yeah.
And so how does that, so assuming that's true, which I believe it is, how does that impact the buying cycle from your perspective? Does it change? Because we were also on with Ali Mellon from Forrester a few moments ago, and she was saying there's like tremendous lack of trust in the vendors. And I'm just wondering, is it because of the changes, or is the name change and brand change a way to kind of help with that? I don't know. Your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, there are good reasons to change your brand, right? You might have a stupid name, and all of a sudden you realize it's time to grow up and have a corporate sounding name, right? And
like
the biggest, like Meta or the tobacco companies, they had real good reason to change their names, and they came up with totally innocuous, unrecognizable names that only Wall Street would follow. But when a security company does it, it's usually when they're shifting from an early focus on SMB to enterprise, and they want to step away from the SMB reputation. So was it? Now we have human, which is an identity security botnet kind of thing. And they have to spend a lot of money to rebrand, so they also need funding round usually in order to make that happen. I think usually it makes sense. What really doesn't make sense is when we change the name of a technology category, because I don't care what my old friends at Gartner say. If you're a threat intelligence vendor, you're not doing digital risk protection, which is, I feel sorry for anybody who's actually shopping for a good threat intelligence partner to give them a feed of what's going on the dark net, because you look around and every single website says they're protecting digital risks, which is wrong, right? Nobody wants to protect their risks. They want them to go away. And of course, everything's digital unless you're running the sensors on the Hubble Space Telescope or something. And of course, now we're talking about zero trust, which is, good strategy, but everybody's labeling their product as here's a bucket of zero trust you can apply. Same with, you notice that we're talking about passwordless lately. And passwordless is just the new name for client-side certificates. They just found a better home than the browser. They sit in a secure enclave on board. Or ZTNA, which is zero trust application or access to networks and applications. That's web single sign-on. It's still same infrastructure, everything. But their time has come, so it's okay to have a new name because nobody wants that old stuff that they heard about 20 years ago.
It's interesting.
I just need to jump in this because, like we were talking at the beginning, I mean, I come from many years of advertising and branding, so to hear all of this, you just putting together a lot of thoughts that I normally have when Sean and I talk about the business of cybersecurity, right? And I think what you're doing is, that's an hobby I don't want to have, collecting all this. But we need somebody that does it.
Yeah.
And
it is literally my life's work in one volume, right?
Yeah.
And yes, we're turning it into a business. Obviously, I'm in the book writing and publishing business, but we're turning it into a SaaS app as well. So because literally as soon as I send the files to the printer, the data's out of date. And because companies are getting acquired every quarter.
Yeah. And that's exactly what my question, about branding, right? I mean, the perception of why you're changing your name, why you're changing the name of, it's kind of like the marketing game that I question if in the end is a positive things for the industry, for that perception. So I'd love your opinion on that.
Yeah, the old saw from the advertising world is it costs $100 million to create a global brand. And I'm sure it's a lot more than that today. Mm-hmm. So you probably should consider the overall costs of the brand. But if you haven't gotten any new customers in a quarter, then it's easy to explain to your existing customers that you change your name and, please send us all the enrollment forms for the new company name. But then you can go out to the world as if you're a young, scrappy startup.
Because people love startups, I guess.
They really do. They really do.
There you go.
Not, keep in mind, if you're trying to sell to Gartner's clients, they don't love startups. Gartner has done surveys, and their clients are 80% late adapters. So they're going to buy IBM first, and Cisco, and Symantec. They're not going to buy from a startup, and you don't have a chance.
So I'm just thinking, because I remember years ago, and this will be off tangent a little bit here, but I'm going to do it anyway. Years ago, we heard antivirus was dead. Microsoft launched an antivirus product, and that whole category was going to go away. It's still there, called something else now, right? And then we saw it kind of revolutionize through the CrowdStrike and the Cylance wave.
Yep.
And I'm just wondering, and I've seen cycles, I think we talked about this before as well, the cycle of IAM, right?
Yep. It's coming around. Yeah.
It's cool and fun, and then it goes away, and it's cool and fun, and then it goes away. So I'm just wondering, how does that play out in this space?
Yeah, it's very interesting that you bring up antivirus in particular, because last year, for the first time ever, I took all 17 categories that I use as the major buckets. And I use a very defense in depth way to categorize, right? No zero trust, no MITRE attack frameworks, just, you've got the network layer, the endpoint layer, the data layer, the identity layer, etc. But I've been tracking them for almost 17 years. For the first time ever, one of those categories shrunk in total headcount, and it was endpoint security. And that's because, out of 230 endpoint security companies, there are 130 antivirus companies. They are going away. Panda Security got acquired by a little firewall vendor. The biggest thing that ever happened, and you can go back and find places where I wrote in Forbes that there's no consolidation in our industry until Symantec buys Trend Micro. And I'd always say that, right? It's like, show me consolidation. It ain't happening because Symantec's buying other stuff that's cooler, right? And last year, what's left of Symantec Consumer, Norton LifeLock, acquired Avast. And said they were acquiring Avast, and they finally got permission a year later to do that. That's consolidation, and that's exactly what's going on. They are consolidating, getting any cash flow they can out of it. It's big private equity companies behind these deals. They're going to milk what's left of basically people. It's really hard to unsubscribe from your $39 a year Avast or Symantec or McAfee subscription. So there's some residual value there. At the same time, you've got CrowdStrike and SentinelOne and CyberReason, to some extent, even Carbon Black, disrupting the endpoint security space with better stuff. And they don't need as many people, right? They don't need 1,000 signature researchers, because they are using some sort of, I didn't want to say this, AI. They're looking at memory instead of looking at files. And at the same time, Microsoft came along and said, you know what, the antivirus, man, we can do that. And they should do it. So they're just giving it away for free. If you've got a modern version of Windows, you can get rid of all of your antivirus stuff right now. And you'll be in the same boat you're in now, which is anybody who wants to can send a 0-day to you, and they'll get in. But the antivirus vendors couldn't stop a 0-day anyways. Perfect storm for endpoint. The only other space that's going through that right now is fraud prevention, which is interesting because fraud prevention has been the fastest path to riches for a startup founder. Come up with a new way to stop consumer fraud or people hacking into accounts, and within 3 years of launching, you'll be acquired by one of the major credit card companies, or RSA Security back in the day.
Yeah, that's fraud seems, and maybe it's just my limited view, but fraud seems to not get the attention that it that I think it probably should. Certainly in the SOC. Right?
Yeah, that's
and
right.
The XDR, it's always about security and privacy, and at least from my viewpoint. I know we wanted to chat with you briefly. We only have a couple minutes left here, but the potential impact of the recession, the AKA recession that's coming up. I don't know. What do you see happening there?
So, we all heard immediately about the big VCs telling their portfolio companies to conserve cash, don't expect to raise any more money for 18 months. And those will be at down rounds, lower valuations. So they're all doom and gloom, apparently because the stock market for tech has crashed. Definitely. It's down 50, 60% since January 1st. So I've been looking at that closely, trying to track, okay, if that's the case, then investments should be down and growth should be down. It's not the case at all. So yes, last year was a record-setting year for investment, $24 billion. The previous year was also a record at $10 billion. There have been $10 billion of investment through August 1st of this year. So we're on track to hit another $20 billion year investment. So I don't see anything slowing down. And I think that if you're taking advice from your board, your investors, that is telling you that now's the time to cut back, not hire people, you may be blundering, because there are some startups that have $50 to $100 million that they got earlier this year, and they're going to hire your people away. And it's the most expensive thing you can do is hire people, right? It takes forever to get good people. And yes, the cyber reasons of the world could probably afford to cut 10% of their staff in layoffs, and maybe, but I doubt it. I bet those are really good people that are going to go to work for somebody else. And they're going to come out of the recession, first of all, going, we didn't actually have a recession, did we? Because spending on security has been going up the entire year. This is not 2008 when people did cut back on spending.
Well, risk doesn't go away with the recession.
Right.
And then to our previous point on fraud, perhaps people get a little even more creative.
For sure they do. The attackers do not go away.
Yeah.
They take advantage of turmoil and tough times and all the rest to launch more attacks.
And if you cannot find founds, just rebrand yourself. Change the name.
There you go. Good time to be in a marketing agency doing that rebrand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not the recession that you're going to have there.
No.
A lot to think about, and I'd love to chat more about all these topics. And these are quick bites, just to connect with our coverage. But definitely, let's plan a more in-depth conversation, Sean.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool.
Richard is always welcome, and I'm going to make a shout out to Leslie Kesselring. Always appreciative to her for connecting.
She's the best. Yeah.
You and I, and everybody listening to this episode. Hopefully, it made you think. It certainly did me. And stay tuned for more. We have lots more coming still from Black Hat and DEF CON. Richard, thanks a million. Keep well, my friend. Congratulations with the book and the new SaaS app where you want to get into that data and explore it and see what's going on. Super cool. I'm always impressed. Always impressed.
All right, cool. Thanks, you guys.
All right,
Very cool.
everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of our on-location conversation. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share ITSPmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.